that all recruit officers at this level must have this type of training. It's also every 3 years, the experienced officers, I talked about that in-service training, they actually go through a refresher course on autism awareness. In addition to these objectives, there's another long list of training objectives on understanding intellectual and developmental disabilities. The police recruits actually have a week-long training for intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they get a wide range of different topics. One block of instruction being the autism awareness that I teach. So we're going to talk about that training, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the crisis intervention training that the police department has. So in the training that I present to the recruits, we focus on teaching the key characteristics of autism, and more importantly, get the recruits to understand that if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. There's not a cookie cutter approach. Everybody's unique and everybody's different, just like everybody else in the world. So we teach that, and we also teach the vulnerabilities commonly associated with autism. We identify the impact of these key characteristics and vulnerabilities in a crisis situation. We talk about communication and de-escalation techniques to effectively and safely interact with people with autism in a crisis. Then we also identify community partners to assist with CIT programs, trainings, and proactive safety approaches. So again, we're going to talk about the key components of the curriculum that we give to the police recruits. We begin by highlighting the need for autism training. Why do we include a training specific to autism in Howard County? We know the prevalence of autism is high here in Howard County. We talk about how people specifically move into Howard County because of the services. There are many kids in our schools, neighborhoods, and broader communities with autism. We share the statistics with them. We mention a few recent headlines that make clear the need for better training, and we'll a little bit later in the presentation, we'll talk about some of the videos that we show the recruits and talk through to see how the officer could have handled the situation a little bit differently, or maybe done things a little bit better. We talk about Ethan Saylor and his tragic death at the movie theater in Frederick years ago. Ethan's mother, Patty Saylor, advocated for mandated training. I'm actually going to show you a video here in a few minutes that Patty Saylor made that I showed all the recruits to show, really highlight and hammer home the need for training and the importance of this type of training. And finally, most importantly, we include self-advocate voices that have said we want to feel safe, understood, and included. And the only way to do that is building through awareness and provided training. So this is a short video by Patty Saylor, and this is one of the first things that I show the recruits so that they really understand why we need this training and the importance of it.
My son Ethan is my oldest child. He would be 31 this coming December if he was still alive. Ethan had Down syndrome, but there was a lot more to Ethan than his diagnosis. Well, looking back on his life after he died, very strong throughout his life was his passion and admiration for people in uniform, particularly law enforcement, but that could extend to military. So in January of 2013, it was just a typical Saturday in our life. I was teaching a class during the day, so Ethan had support staff, and they came to go to movies. Later in the night, I got a call or text from his staff letting me know that Ethan didn't want to come home, that he had watched the movie and didn't want to come home. She was having trouble helping him transition from leaving the movie to getting in the car to come home, which is not unusual, again, for somebody with a cognitive disability to let go of one activity and begin a new activity, which we refer to as transitions. And Ethan did not need somebody with eyes on him all the time. So it was perfectly a good move for her to go and get the car and bring it back. He did not have to have somebody with him. When she goes to get the car, she double parks in front of the theater. She sees me walking back into the theater because he's decided he is not finished. He's going to go watch it again. Staff comes in, and she interacts with the security officer who's off duty. And she indicates that, yes, that he is in there and he has Down syndrome. He doesn't want to go home. His mom, I was on the phone with his mom. His mom is on her way. And security guard, who's off-duty officer, said, no, you stay out here. right in there, two other security guards who are also off-duty officers joined. So by all accounts, she is being made to stay out in the hallway. By all accounts, he is in the theater, quietly sitting there. Most patrons don't know he's even there. And an officer approaches him very nicely and calmly and says, son, or buddy, or whatever he called him at the time, that you need to leave. You don't have a ticket. And he didn't totally ignore him. So the other two officers come in. Ethan continues to just not move, which is very characteristic of someone with Down syndrome. They begin to give him ultimatums. And so one officer doing the talking, and from what I understand, ultimatum was, you need to leave, we're going out to arrest you. He doesn't budge. So two of the officers reach under Ethan's armpits, and they're lifting him up to get him to move out of the seat and leave the theater. My understanding then that three officers dragged him out of the seat, dragged him out of the row, dragged him down the ramp, and at that point they're turning around the small wall, going to continue down the ramp, out of the theater, and something happens there. And I don't know that we're ever going to know exactly what happens there, although there are two eyewitnesses that give their report that Ethan somehow ends up on the ground, face down, being handcuffed, as an officer kneeling on his back, and his staff is still out in the hall, but she hears him scream, hears him scream to her and scream. And she bursts into, she just says, come in, and finds him on the ground, and he comes. We don't know, and it's not being reported, and no one has an explanation for how he was put on the ground. He didn't just lie himself down on his stomach. So somehow he was put down on the ground. And he stopped breathing. And then so he died. He died, and the coroner's report, the medical examiner's report, is that he died of asphyxiation, and the cause of death is asphyxiation, manner of death homicide. But had he been left alone, somebody waited until I got there, which would have been about 10 to 15 minutes, he would not have died. Would have still been sitting there watching the movie, and would have happened. So we had a lot of questions, and we had to figure out how to tell our other children and how to live it out in the most outrageous way you possibly can find at the hands of the very people he idolized. So clearly, I did not believe at the time, and I still don't believe, that those men intended to kill my son. I will never admit that, but it still happened.
So I show that video really to put in the recruit's mind. It's like there are different ways to handle different situations, and we kind of walk through that based on Patty Saylor's narrative of the incident, and we kind of walk through and say, all right, what could we have done differently, or what could possibly have been a different thing, and to get them to start thinking, do I have to rush in and solve something immediately? Do I have time? Are there other people there that may be able to assist me? Do I have to control the situation by myself? So that's really the beginning of delving into the training and to get them to start thinking there's other options, there's other resources available, there's other tools that you have available. You don't always have to rush in and to take over a situation. So that's really how we start the presentation. So then we move into, we jump into the characteristics of autism. We always talk about that, how it's considered a spectrum disorder. There are many people in our own community with autism. Some have very mild symptoms on the day-to-day. But in a crisis situations, those symptoms or those characteristics may look quite different. We also teach that there are people who require greater support. People may be more affected in one area, sensory, for instance, or another, perhaps communication. So we actually talk about the entire spectrum, and that there may be different strengths, different challenges, and how to work through those challenges or recognize those challenges and how we can have better outcomes and serve our community in a better way. We talk a lot about communication. It may require assistive technology or alternatives to speech. One of the scenarios I'm going to go through a little bit later is a perfect example of that, and all the different techniques or tools the officers tried to communicate. We teach how to interact with somebody who may be limited in their speech. We discuss the social nuances of some people in the spectrum, eye contact, tone and volume of speech, repetition of questions, awareness or lack of awareness of personal space. And we also talk about processing delays and how anxiety impacts people's processing. We actually do a little exercise called the Red Fox Jumped Over the Fence, which puts them on the spot to finish the sentence. And the first time they do it, they just go through and they all add another sentence to the Red Fox Jumped Over the Fence. Then the second time we do it, you have to finish the sentence, but you can't use the letter A. And you can see how the processing slows down, how they stop to think. And some people actually get stuck and even get flustered because they're overwhelmed and they're trying to think of something, but their mind's drawn a blank. So that's how we kind of teach that the information is there. It's just processed in a different way. It might take a little bit longer for someone to answer you. It's funny in the classroom situation, even the officer's anxiety begins to increase. And it's kind of funny to put them on the spot. And we're in a classroom environment. We're not actually out in the environment. There hasn't been a traumatic incident or a stressful incident. We're just sitting in a classroom. It really does illustrate how anxiety affects processing. So I tell them, imagine how somebody with autism would feel anxious in the situation, and how the officer's interaction with them can escalate things unnecessarily. We also talk about sensory issues and how issues can really impact people with autism, from police sirens and flashing lights to sights, sounds, smells in the environment that could possibly trigger a meltdown. I share several stories of Kyle rocking back and forth, self-stimming or screaming in the pool. He's getting sensory input from the echo as well as the sensitivity to loud noise from sirens. And I tell a funny story about Kyle. I was taking Kyle swimming, and I used to have an unmarked police car, but it was clearly a police car. And Kyle was sitting in the back seat, and he was rocking back and forth so hard, my car was rocking at a traffic light. And I saw a state trooper pull up to the side of me, but he stopped short, and he was staring at me like, who does this police officer have in the back of his car? And he finally pulled up, looked at me really worried, and kind of gave me the thumbs up. And I gave him a thumbs up back. But again, what that state trooper thought may have been happening was just Kyle being excited about going to the pool. So that's kind of the things that we talk about, kind of the personal examples that I talk about in the training that kind of hammer home why this training is so important. So we go over behavior, and we talk about how behavior is a form of communication. And we also talk about how some repetitive behaviors are often self-regulated or self-regulating. They may look different, but it may be rocking, spinning, humming. We talk about impulse control, how that may be a little bit more difficult for people with autism. And we touch on the need for routine for many individuals with autism. And an officer interfering in a child's routine might, again, escalate a situation unnecessarily. So we talk about, in all situations or all incidents, it may not be necessary to break that routine. We may be able to just to stand back and let that person go through their routine and self-soothe before we have to move in and take action. Then we move into vulnerabilities of people with autism. And again, after we go through the characteristics, we keep in mind that autism is a spectrum disorder. Each person is affected differently, and we discuss some of the vulnerabilities that people with autism have. We talk about that the majority of people with autism and related developmental disabilities, they're not violent. They're more often the victims of crimes than they are the perpetrators of crime. And if they are involved in a crime, it's usually because they were coerced or they were kind of pushed into it by somebody they thought that was their friend. We talk about specific examples of how people have been bullied or post-elopement abduction, abuse and physical restraint. We discussed an incident in St. Mary's County where two teenage girls convinced a young man with autism that one of them was his girlfriend. They assaulted him, had him walk onto a frozen pond where he fell through several times. They assaulted him. They posted videos of the attack online. That's how they were caught. And even after they were arrested, unfortunately, these young men still thought they were his friends. And I actually use a example from my own professional experience where I was working narcotics, and there was a shipment of narcotics from Texas that we delivered to a house that was intercepted. We delivered to a house in Colombia, and then we went in and realized that it was a young man with a developmental disability that the package was sent to. And fortunately for us, while we were there with that young man and his mom, the actual perpetrator or the suspect showed up to retrieve his package. So we talk about how they're coerced, they think somebody's their friend, but more times than not, they're the victim, not the perpetrator of a crime. And it's important to keep that in mind. We talk about how they may not fully understand danger, elopement and wandering. We discussed drowning, number one cause of death related to wandering. We talk about safety and self-care. We talk about how a child with autism may bolt if frightened or startled. We don't know why, but we talk about how people with autism are drawn to water for some reason. So it's really important that when you're out in the community, you're answering these calls. If you do get a missing person case for somebody with autism, that you know where the water sources are, you go check them first, because that's, for whatever reason, they are drawn to that. And we really discuss how sometimes they don't understand danger, and we especially use the example of somebody's involved in a traffic accident and you're removing people from the car for their safety. You realize somebody has autism, you have to get them in the car because they just stood in a traumatic event and you don't want them to run away from you. So we talk about the importance of recognizing that and making sure that you care for everybody and the safety of everybody on the scene. So then we go into communication and de-escalation strategies. Now that we've built kind of understanding of autism, we want to focus on the true priority of the training, which is how to communicate and, more importantly, how to de-escalate stressful situations. So we talk about the signs of escalation, the stages of a meltdown, the importance for patience, calm instills calm, listening skills, communication strategies for limited speech communicators, awareness of command, presence, and gestures, respect for personal space, how to use first and then statements to assist with transitions, building trust, and using all the resources available. If there's a family member, a caregiver on the scene, get the information. They know them better than you do. So make sure that you utilize everybody that's there that can help mitigate this incident as quickly and as calmly as possible. We talk about, I talk from personal experience how important the first and then statements really do help Kyle. So providing clear instructions or expectations, or a clear understanding of what's going on to happen first and next is often helpful. So, and I really do preach about the importance of being honest, is that you have to be honest in any type of incident, because once you're dishonest with somebody, you've lost all trust, and why should they listen to you more? So, we talk about slowing down, being calm, and being honest with your questions or with your demands or your requests on how to resolve an incident. So I'm going to show you another video. This is actually a video on actually how to interact with somebody with autism. It's from CNN, and it talks about an officer that recognized a situation and how he resolved it with a young man that had autism that was having a stressful moment or having it was in crisis.
This is the first time Officer Tim Purdy and 18-year-old Jeremiah Glover have seen one another since that dangerous day.
Long time no see.
And this is the first time Jeremiah's mom has seen the now famous photo.
Wow.
And this is what happened.
This is 911.
May 12th, North Carolina, Charlotte. Jeremiah's mother calls 911 to report her autistic son missing. He's got a history of violence, maybe suicidal.
Oh, we're doing good, and I don't know what happened today.
Purdy, a 22-year police veteran, is just starting his day. On the radio, he already hears two fellow officers have found Jeremiah, but he reads something else in their voices.
You know what? Let me just kind of head that way and see if I might.
Driving up, he sees the officers physically struggling to restrain the team
I pulled right here.
and senses it's about to go very bad. His next move is remarkable.
So as I approached them, I just kind of got down on my knees, you know, and tried to get to his level. When you talk about it, football, the Panthers.
The explosive situation turned into a conversation. Fellow officer was so moved by the scene, he took a photo. It went viral. So tell me this, was the getting down on his level training or something you have just learned?
It's something that I've learned over the years.
Jeremiah's distraught mom remembers racing up, fearing the worst.
The officer definitely was on his level, sitting with him, communicating, and my son was safe.
Purdy is overwhelmed by all of the attention, saying he knows other cops do similar things daily without any recognition.
There you go. Leave on good one, bro.
What could have gone wrong has turned out more than all right, thanks to a police officer who showed up armed with compassion. Martin Savage, CNN, Charlotte.
So I showed that video to really demonstrate how that situation could have gone horribly wrong, but that officer took the time to recognize there may be something different here going on, and he actually took the time to actually de-escalate the situation instead of keep forcing a bad situation or make it worse. So, and you can see the outcome was great for everybody, and that's really what we harp on in the training, is that at the end of the day, everybody goes home safe, and that there's different techniques and different ways you can diffuse a situation. It always doesn't have to be by rushing in there and making an arrest or something of that nature. You can step back, you can let the situation de-escalate on itself, and that's something that we really, you don't always have to go in and solve it. Sometimes you just have to make the environment safe so that the actual incident can diffuse itself. So after that video, then we actually go through some scenarios and videos that are actually actual incidents that we've had in the county and other areas that we use. So we have the Patty Sailor. Obviously, we talked about that one, the need for training, the officer consoling the teen, how he did everything right, and then we use some self-advocates videos. So we have a video by a young man named Grant who's driving. He gets pulled over by the police, and he actually talks about the process, why he slowed down, what happened with the police officer pulled him over, and that exchange. And it really shows that sometimes what situations appear is not how it's are. You have to step back and look at the totality of the circumstances. I showed a video of Kyle in the swimming pool and some of the processing challenges. He's so excited and happy to be in the pool that he can't answer questions from his mom that he knows. He's known him for years, but he's so overwhelmed by having such a good time. So I use the example is that imagine that this is Kyle at his best and he's having a hard time answering simple questions. So imagine if he's in a terrible situation and he's under stress, how it's going to be even harder for him to be able to answer simple questions. We show a video of Carly's Cafe, talks about sensory issues. We show a video of the police shooting in Miami where the officers actually wounded the therapist that was trying to help. And in that situation, the police received a 911 call that a suicidal subject was armed with a gun and was sitting in the roadway. The officers got there. It was a young man with autism that was sitting there with a toy train. The therapist was with him. For whatever reason, the officers drew their weapons and continued to shoot the man's, and then one officer discharged his weapon and actually shot the therapist in the leg. We talk about the tunnel vision, how to avoid that, just because you got a 911 call that's telling you what's happening, that may not be what the actual incident is. You have to go to the scene and see exactly what the incident. Don't rely on the 911 call, because sometimes those callers are also under stress, and what they're reporting may not actually be the true nature of the incident. Then we show a video from Arizona where an Arizona officer sees a young man playing with a string. He misinterprets stimming behavior with this string as a potential somehow drug-related call, and at first he ignores the caregiver that's there with this young man. But again, we talk about, not everything is as it always appears, and don't get tunnel vision thinking, oh, this is drug related, and then ignore everything else. So we go over that one, and we talk about that department did not have autism training in Arizona, so the officer didn't understand autism, and what he thought was somehow drug-related paraphernalia. It was just a young man that was playing with a string, because that's how he self-soothes. And then the other video we show is, and I was actually involved in this incident, it was police response to incident on Route 29. I'm actually going to show you the video. It's actually condensed down from over 25 minutes. Just to set the scenario. So a father took his son with autism to our grassroots crisis intervention center. I wanted him to go to the hospital. The son didn't want to go. The son ran away, said he was going to commit suicide by running into traffic. Officers got the 911 call. They started going through the process of checking the areas. They realized that the young man had a cell phone. At the time, we had an aviation unit, so they got the aviation unit in the air. They requested a K9 unit. They started going to the cell phone company to request what we call pings of the cell phone to see if we could get a location. And our actually helicopter unit found the young man on the side of 29. And I'm going to show you, we've reduced the video from like 25 minutes to 2 or 3 minutes, and we narrated on what the officers did and how this all resolved. But so really, what was over 25 minutes to a half-hour incident in like 2 or 3 minutes.
The child was located on the side of southbound Route 29 by the exit to Route 32 West. He was on the phone talking with his father, who was with the police department and the mobile crisis team at the Grassroots Crisis Intervention Center. The father is known to be a calming influence on his son. The child is still standing under the exit sign. The helicopter is working with ground units on a response plan that won't agitate the child or cause him to run into oncoming traffic. The first police officer pulls up to the child, but stops short of the child and begins blocking the exit lane to form a barrier between the child and oncoming traffic. Additional officers have arrived on the scene and have formed a barrier between the child and oncoming traffic. Several police officers are on scene and are out of their cars standing by. No one has approached the child, as he is calm and still on the phone with his father. As you watch the video, an officer has engaged the child in conversation but has not yet approached. You can see 2 officers at the scene formulating a response plan to safely resolve the incident. The officers on scene have decided to wait for the father and the mobile crisis team to arrive. The child is still calm. This plan is relayed to other officers on the scene. They will only act if the child attempts to run into oncoming traffic. The mobile crisis team and the father have arrived on scene. If you look to the bottom of the screen, you will see the father and the mobile crisis team approach the officers and the child. As the father approaches, the child relaxes, walks over to his father, and gives him a hug. Officers still continue to stand back. There's no reason to rush in. The situation is de-escalating on its own.
It's not even sound. It needs sound.
The officers explain to the child that he has to go to the hospital.
This is about a kid they found walking on the side of 29 right now.
He will be transported to the hospital. The child is told that the dad can ride to the hospital with them. The trigger for the child in this particular incident is that he did want to go to the hospital because he didn't want to miss a TV show. The police explained to the child that his dad can DVR the TV show. The child agrees to be placed in handcuffs and agrees to go to the hospital with the police officer. The child is placed in handcuffs and walked to a police car. While walking to the car, the father's in tears, thanking officers for how they handled this incident. In a previous encounter, it took 5 officers to wrestle the son to the ground, place him in handcuffs, and transport him to the hospital.
So I'm actually very, very proud of that incident. I happened to be working that night and I responded to it. And when I got there, I was a sergeant at the time. And a lot of the officers I recognized from training them in the academy, but I did not know who they were. And just how they conducted themselves and how they acted and how they handled the situation was fantastic. And a few months later, I actually was promoted to lieutenant and took over this particular platoon that was working. So I got to work with these officers on the day-to-day, and they still responded to situations like this in a very professional manner. So it was actually so nice, at least for me, to see what I taught in the classroom be put into practice out in the field. So after we talk about the videos, and we actually go through some scenarios that happen in it in Howard County. And again, the focus is to get these police recruits to start thinking, okay, how would I handle this situation? What would I do? There was an incident in Laurel. A young man wearing only diapers wanders into a stranger's apartment, goes into the closet. That's pretty much all the information the officers receive on that 911 call. So we kind of walk through that call. You know, what would you do? What resources would you call in? And how would you resolve it? And, you know, we talk about, first and foremost, what the officers did on the scene was, it was a summer day. So they actually got some clothes for the young man and put him in the back seat of a police car with air conditioning. So preserving the safety and dignity of that child was first and foremost. They did a great job with that. And then the different steps that they took on how to communicate with this teen and the different resources. And how this one was resolved was actually they called me at home because they knew I ran, I worked with the Autism Society, and I ran our tracking program and our 911 flagging program. They asked if I was familiar, and I said, send me a picture. I wasn't familiar with this young man. He wasn't in our program. And then I reached out to Beth and said, hey, do you know anybody that might be able to help us? She actually reached out to a contact in the school system, and we were able to get a hold of the principal at Cedar Lane, who actually knew the young man and knew the family. So it's, again, thinking outside the box, using all the resources you have available to you. And again, that was a successful resolution to that incident. And then we talk about a missing child by Reservoir Dam. 10-year-olds were missing for 1 hour. The location's near the water, near the reservoir. What resources would they employ? What notifications would they make? This was resolved. Again, we had our helicopter up in the air. The child, like helicopters, came out of the wood line into the water, waited to the helicopter. An officer waded in to grab him. But we talk about the importance when you're on these calls, when it's over, to really talk to the family and say, as soon as somebody goes missing, call us right away. You know, don't wait, because the longer you wait, the further they can get away from you. So call as quickly as you realize somebody's missing, so that we can respond, get the information, and then start getting the wheels in motion to get the resources out there. We talk about a meltdown in the store where a young man strikes his mother. A passerby calls 911. What type of incident is that? Does it really, you know, how should you handle this? What should you do? And really how you should handle that call is that you want to make sure that everybody feels safe. The crisis is over, and does that parent feel safe, or what can we do for the parent to help him or her safely get the child back home? And that's really the focus of that case. And then there was another one that was not in Howard County, where the family called 911 for assistance. An officer said, stop calling 911. And unfortunately, the young man attacked his parents and with a knife and stabbed them. So we talk about, how could you have handled that better? How could you have handled that differently? And we do talk about the majority of families, they only call 911 as a last resort. They usually handle it on their own. So when they call 911 for assistance, it's because they ran out of options and they truly need help. So we tell them, it's like, if you get a 911 call for something like this, it's because they've run out of their resources and they need some assistance, and we should respond and give them the help that they need. Then the final section of the presentation I go over with them is devoted to building awareness of the partnerships that exist between the police department, the community organizations such as the Autism Society, grassroots, the school system, all the different resources that are out there. And this is where I really promote the 911 address flagging program. It's voluntary. People can enter it. They provide us the information that they think is important for not only the police, but fire and EMS to know. And what happens is you fill out this form, you can get it to the Autism Society or go to the police department, and the information is housed in our 911 call center. So if somebody calls 911 and they have a loved one in this program, a flag will pop up and there will be information that is specific to that person or that address about, are they afraid of loud noises? Are they afraid of sirens? Are they attracted to shiny objects? So if they see your badge, they may come up and touch your badge. It's completely voluntary. People can enter it and exit it whenever they like. We reach out to the families twice a year just to make sure the information they have is correct. Sometimes people move, they change phone numbers or something like that. So it's been a great program. It's really grown. At last count, I believe there's over 350 families that are in it. We've had several success stories with it, both on the police and the fire department side. So it's a great program, a great partnership between the police department and Autism Society, that if you have a loved one with autism or developmental disability, I would really encourage you to participate in that program. And again, it's strictly voluntary on your part. So also we talk about building partnerships. So one recruit class that we taught this training to, our police recruits, the classes adopt a nonprofit every year. And during my presentation, I mentioned the Autism Society, and they actually adopted the Autism Society as a nonprofit for the year. So they actually went out and did fundraising for the Autism Society. They participated in some of the events and actually interact with the young men and women and the families to meet them in person and get to know them on a personal level and what's important to them and what they want police officers to know. So again, it was just a great partnership, and I think both the police recruits and the families got a lot out of it, and we were very, I didn't strong arm them, but I was glad that they took my advice and adopted the Autism Society as their charity for that year. So we have a very robust community outreach program. My office is actually in our community outreach building on Little Patuxent Parkway, right next to the Firestone. So they're visible, they're present, they're interacting in the community, they attend the events. They couldn't attend the walk this year, but they made a very nice video encouraging everybody and promising to be there next year once we get through this pandemic. They attend resource fairs to promote the 911 program. We've had the Autism Society come and do police tours in the past. We use our mounted volunteers. They love to come out to the walk every year and show off their horses to everybody at the walk. And again, it just really, we do really reach out to the community and develop those partnerships, because it just makes everything easier, I think, for everybody when you already have those partnerships and people feel safe and secure interacting with the police officer. So that's actually the end of the presentation. So get to the, if anybody has any questions, and then the last slide, I actually have my email address. If anybody wants to contact me, if you have a scenario or situation you think that may be beneficial for the recruits to learn about, I'm always looking to keep the presentation as fresh as possible. So at this time, if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, Bill, this is Mary Ann Martinson. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Yes, yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I cannot express my gratitude for all that you have done and for all of the officers in Howard County who are so compassionate and so willing to learn about autism. So my hat's off to you. Thank you so much. The flagging program is amazing. I just really commend you. And I understand that, I mean, I come from a long line of police officers in my family, and I know that it is such a difficult job. And you really need to have instant reflexes and, you know, instantaneous decision making. And I feel so, you know, conflicted with what you guys have to go through. And then on top of that, how do you then parse out that a particular situation is, you know, someone on the autism spectrum or someone with an intellectual disability? And I just can't imagine how difficult it is for you guys to be able to instantaneously, and I just really commend you so much for all that you've done and to train your officers in that respect.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We actually have a fantastic staff at our academy. The recruits are actually in class for 6 months, and then they spend several months with experienced officers actually doing what we call field training. So they actually, once they graduate from the academy, they ride with an experienced officer and they start learning, you know, how to use those techniques that they were learning in the academy. And then once they've been out, what we call out on the road for a while, answering calls for service, interacting in the community, we actually bring them back and we have a crisis intervention training program that the goal is to put every police officer through it in our department. We're probably close to 70%, but we want the new officers to go out and get some experience first and then come back for the crisis intervention because they have a little bit more experience. And then they go through a whole week, again, of de-escalation and different types of developmental disabilities, mental health issues. They hear from self-advocates. So really, you don't leave the academy once you've received your training. Your training is continually updated and enhanced. We actually go above and beyond the Police Training Commission standards in Howard County, and that's really from back with Chief McMahon through Chief Gardner through Chief Myers that have really kind of embraced how important it is to this community and how we need to do the best we can to service everybody in the community. Anyone else?
Bill, I'm sure I have some questions. First off, thank you so much for doing this. It's wonderful, and I want to echo what Marianne said. You know, I'm so proud to be part of a community where this is, you know, this training and support for our community really has been built up within the police department. It's just extraordinary that happens. I want to thank you and all others who've been involved with getting us where we are. We are very fortunate as a community to have the commitment there in the police department. It's much appreciated. couple of questions for you. One is on the flagging program. How do families go about getting that updated, or getting that reviewed? Is there a way that we can do that?
So twice a year, it's actually run through our community outreach division now, and we actually have a person specifically assigned to that. So twice a year, they reach out to the families to say, "Hey, has anything changed?" So once you're in the program, you should have an email or a contact to reach out to. But if something has changed, you don't have a contact, people can always email me or contact me, and I can get the information to the right people or have them reach out so that they can respond and see what's changed or something like that.
Okay, I appreciate it. And then you referenced one of the scenarios that you go through as a young person or a person with autism who got stopped by the police while driving. Am I right? I'm full of stupid questions, by the way. Am I right to understand that nowadays drivers can get something added to their license related to a disability?
Yes, it just came out October 1st and it is now available. So you can actually get and pardon me, I actually printed it out to share, but it's actually a voluntary developmental disability card through MVA, and it's something you go to MVA, make an appointment, you fill out a form, they give you the card, and you can carry that with you. So if you are stopped by the police, there's no questions asked by MVA. If you sign up for the card, you'll get it. And then if you are stopped by the police, you can present that card with your driver's license.
Okay, all right, that's
great.
Great.
It's a program run through the state through the MVA. So you would have to contact the MVA. I believe they're still appointment only right now because of COVID, but you can make an appointment, go in, fill out the form, and they will issue you the card.
Are there other jurisdictions around the state that have a flagging program, by the way?
We're still the only one in Maryland. There's other ones in different parts of the country, but we're still the first in Maryland that has adopted this program and really have taken it beyond and exceeded any expectations we had of it.
Okay. Right. And I guess just last, at the risk of putting my foot on the third rail here, there's a lot of dialogue in the community right now about this school resource officer program, and I know the whole review underway. Do you have any comment that you want to make or that related to the school resource officers and how they support are really ambassadors for best practice in terms of supporting the disability community as a whole, and autism in particular. I've got a young man who's in my household who really forged a really strong relationship with the school resource officer, and I believe that relationship really spilled over into the school community as a whole and was a great example for others as to how to build and maintain and really positively include somebody with autism in the school community.
Yeah, I actually, I'm obviously a huge proponent of the school resource officer program. I do know that the youth division where that program is housed, they've made all their presentations to the Board of Education during several different meetings. I'm a huge proponent of it. I think they do a great job forging relationships with the students. You can't quantify what they resolve before it ever even happened, unfortunately. But again, I hope that the community listens to the data and the presentation that we've made, and that the school board obviously votes to keep the school resource officer program. But to me, I think it's a huge resource. I think it's great. The officers in the school, they get to know the kids. I know in Kyle's incidents at Marriott's Ridge, the SRO was out there to greet Kyle every day. He came to school and say hello to him and make sure he got into the school. Okay, so again, I think it's a wonderful program. I know they've made all the presentations to the Board of Education, and we'll just have to wait for the whatever decision they render.
Yeah, and I guess I mean, not to focus necessarily on the SRO program, but I guess my point would be, I think that the police department can really be a strong ambassador for the autism community with other parts of the community, with other institutions and so forth. Just by way of what you model in terms of excellence and training and inclusion. Anyway, thank you again, Bill. I could ask you questions all night, but I'm sure others have questions too.
Yeah. Angela, or Marianne, I thought one of you two had a question.
Hi, it's Angela. I have a question. I have a couple actually. The flagging program. So is this a portal that any of the county police organizations can access, or is this specific to residents of Howard County?
It's only for residents of Howard County. It's not a portal. It's actually a parent fills out a form, and then that form is then put into two different internal databases the police department use. One is what's called our CAD system, which is our 911 center, and then the other one is an RMS system. So that, for example, if we found somebody that was nonverbal wandering, and they couldn't communicate, but we were able either to have an ID or a name tag on, we could actually run that person's name and a flag would pop up. But they're only internal systems for residents of Howard County.
Okay. My son, we live in Anne Arundel County, but I was very interested in attending this webinar because my son goes to Howard Community College, and he's had some struggles. He's got Asperger's, so I just wanted to get some information. But I have to say I'm very, very impressed with the presentation, the data, the agenda, because it actually shows that the police do a lot more than we know, and I think having that knowledge and being able to give parents a sense of reassurance that the police do care. We care about our kids, and having the support is so very important. So thank you for allowing me to participate.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Bill, I put the link to the application. It's also on our website, which is down right now, but there's the link in the chat if anybody wants it.
Great.
I also want to give a shout out to Neil Lichter, who's on the call. Neil, can you hear us?
I can. How are you?
Good. Neil's with Pathfinders for Autism, and they also do some wonderful work training our first responders. And can we give a shameless plug? You guys have a program coming up too, correct?
We have so much stuff planned these days. Tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, is our wandering and elopement workshop, which you could still register for. If I can shamelessly plug, go to pathfindersforautism.org, and it's right on the front page.
I'm going to put it up here.
Thank you. And that's tomorrow at 1:00. And then later on this month, we actually have a panel of police officers, first responders, as well as a young man on the autism spectrum, whom we're just having sort of a panel discussion about interacting with police and best practices and best things, rules to follow and things to think about when doing the interactions. I think what Bill does for Howard County is amazing. I actually play a video that Bill narrates in my trainings. And what Bill does for Howard County Police, I have the honor to be able to do for lots of other police departments and first responders around the state. And I've learned a lot. I had to drop off at one point because we had an autism interferes in some ways, some days. But I'm definitely going to go back and watch the recording because I'm always looking for things to pick up when I have to do my trainings, and I do recruits and CIT as well. So I appreciate what you do, Bill, really.
Oh, thanks, Neil. And it was great that actually Pathfinders for Autism picked up that 25-minute video and actually they're the ones that created it down and got it down to 2 or 3 minutes so it could be usable in trainings.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things we use regularly because it really is, it's such a positive, it's a great story and it's how it should be done. And I hate having the show, I don't want to, we don't armchair quarterback these videos. And, there's enough negativity out there. I like to show positive videos of positive interactions and when it works out right. So I'm glad to be able to use that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is Mary Ann. Speaking of more positive experiences, I mean, I could go on all night, so I'll try to keep it brief. But Bill, you have trained your officers extremely well. My daughter, Megan Ross, and she just, for some reason, just does not like people in uniform. And she can be verbally abusive and so it's not always a good attribute to have. So I reached out a couple of years ago and wanted to find out from some of your officers, your resource officers, if there was a way to just meet Megan in public in a situation where they would naturally encounter her. So not something artificial like just coming to the house randomly, but to meet her somewhere out in the community and to just happen upon her and, kind of see how she would react and get her to trust them more. And I have to tell you, I was brought to tears because they met her. She loves to go to Petco. So we arranged a time to meet without Megan knowing it. And the officers just walked in and struck up a conversation and immediately gained Megan's trust. So much so, and they really just went way above and beyond their duty, and so much so that Megan became accustomed to them and met them on several occasions out in the community, and improved so much that I can't even begin to tell you. When we crossed the border quite often to go into Canada, she would verbally abuse the border crossing guards. And, I was fearful of us being incarcerated at some point, but she has really developed just tremendous amount of respect and, kindness. And I thank you guys so much for all you have done to promote that and, to meet her where she is and to gain that trust. I really appreciate all the efforts that you guys put into this.
Great. I actually remember the emails going back and forth trying to figure out the best way to do that. And I'm glad it was, it was so successful. Yes.
It was great. Thanks so much.
Good. Great.
We have any other questions? Other questions for Bill?
All right, well, if there's no more questions, my email isn't at the end of the presentation, but it's also in the chat box. So if something comes up later or you ever find that you need a resource or you're not sure who to reach out to, please feel free to contact me. I may not be the person that works in that area anymore, but I certainly know everybody that does, and I can get you to the right people. So please feel free to email me with any questions, concerns, anything that you need. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Again, it might, because of my position now and my job currently, I may not be the one that actually takes care of the issue, but I will certainly get you to the people that will.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call tonight. And thank you especially to Bill for the presentation and all you do. Patrick, I'm sorry, did you have something? Oh, okay.
Melissa, actually, this is Beth Benavides. And Angela, I just wanted to mention that if I do a lot of the special education advocacy for the Autism Society, and if I can help you in any way with whatever it is going on at HCC or any instances, or Bill and I could collaborate together and put our heads together and how we might be able to help you or your son, by all means, please let us know.
Thank you.
This is actually Matthew Plants, and I am a self-advocate on the board of directors. And if you need any assistance advocating for your son at HCC, I would be happy to step in and help. Or if you need any suggestions or anything.
Thank you so much. He actually will be going to he just got accepted to Capital Technology in Laurel. So he's finishing up his bachelor's. He will be finishing up at Capital Tech. So HCC has been wonderful. Oh, I've been very fortunate in that his advisor, actually her son has Asperger's as well. So I call her my guardian angel.
Do we know who the advisor is?
Her name is Deborah Radcliffe Borsch.
Deborah Radcliffe Borsch. My mom might know her.
She's I can't even I get very emotional because she's been amazing. So thank you all. I appreciate the support.
Thank you, Angela. And thanks, Beth. I would say also the 911 applications on our website, which is down right now, but it's it is in the chat. So anything else before we close? Okay, guys. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening in.
All right, have a good evening.